I often say that the core practices of the non-dual path to awakening are meditation and inquiry. And if you really distill those two practices down to their absolute core fundamental essence, meditation is just simply being the natural state. That doesn't require time. So when we sit, from the moment we sit, we're sitting as that. Inquiry at its essence is the question, who am I? What am I? What is my essence? What is my true nature? My identity? What's the eternal? If you're resting as a natural state, you don't need the question. If you forget, or you need a little adjustment, orientation, you can ask that, but it's not for the mind, it's again for your experience, we could say. Both directly sitting as that natural state, as that deep sleep state, as that state of void emptiness that's full of presence, full of clarity. The closest thing we could say, it's about just adjusting the experience. It's about adjusting our attention. To say it that way is not really ultimately true, because that's already shining behind everything. So these words, we could say, are more for the mind, or more for the parts that are somehow feeling a little separate from that. Likewise, the question, who am I? That's not for our true nature. When that question has power, and it has power when we rest deep in the silence, the question is just turning that awareness, that emptiness, back to itself. We could say it's an invitation for that space to remember itself, if it's forgotten. Again, it's at its core, it's always awake. Who and what we are is always awake. So these practices, these adjustments, these questions are for those parts in our consciousness that are a little rigidified, solidified, frozen in a false identity. Ultimately, it's kind of funny because these identities, these parts of ourself that forget, they're just thought. They're just mind. And when I use the word mind or thought, it also includes emotion. It includes energy. But it's only solid because there is a repetitive looping thought pattern, looping energy pattern, that's giving the appearance of solidity, of identity, of separation. It's not really there, but it appears as if it is. It feels like it is. And of course the experience will shift and change, ebb and flow, and there'll be different qualities to it. This is why on the path to awaken, there needs to be some sort of a pointing or invitation to point past experience, point past even consciousness. Because if you don't, there's a tendency for fixation in form, even if the form is subtle consciousness. That will always be there, but these pointings are to push through or punch back the last bits of solidity. We could say that's in essence what liberation is. It's just dissolving pockets of solidity in our consciousness and our awareness. And so when there's enough awakeness, enough presence, solidity or fixation just doesn't happen. We could say our experience is like a sand painting. It manifests. Our experience comes into being, but almost as quickly as it's coming into being, it's dissolving. And when these subtle bits of our identity don't have enough charge in them to reformulate, to recrystallize, and there is a lack of seeking for a reference point to stabilize, then we find the true stability. And the true stability has nothing to do with solidity. Nothing to do with knowing who we are as a fixed concept, or a fixed experience, or a fixed perception. We recognize that who and what we are is all experience, all perception, all consciousness. And we rest as the source of everything. We walk and talk and live as the dance of that clear, pristine, indescribable emptiness.